Good evening, colleagues. Good evening, and welcome to the Licensing Committee on the 24th of February. Have we got any apologies? No, Mr. Curler has not apologized. Okay, then next of all, it's my declaration of pecuniary interest. Anyone got any declarations of pecuniary interest? No. Okay, that's good. Then next we have the minutes of the previous meeting, and I'm going to go through them page by page for accuracy. 1, 2, 3. Are we happy with them? You're happy with them? I'm happy with them. That's good. Okay, I'll sign that off in a moment. Then, believe it or not, item 4 is also the last item, and that is the draft street trading policy for the borough, which I believe has already been to Richmond and Wandsworth, but Caroline Sharkey, who's going to be introducing this, will tell us whether that's accurate or not. Okay, Caroline, it's yours.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a new street trading policy that we are proposing to introduce in Merton. We are doing a similar policy. We're running it in Richmond as well, and we'll be presenting it to Richmond Regulatory Committee in June. We don't regulate street trading policy for Wandsworth. We only do it for Merton and Richmond. So I've got a brief outline of the report, Chair, if you want me to walk through this with you. Is that all right?
If you wouldn't mind, yes, please.
Yeah. I'll just give you a summary of it. So this, the licensing authority for Merton is seeking to introduce a new street trading policy, which sets out new standards and procedures that the licensing authority will consider when sorting out all the street trading applications. The applications for street trading are submitted under Part 3 of the London Local Authorities Act 1990, and this includes street trading pitches, tables and chairs on the highway, market store licenses, and shopfront display licenses. The proposed draft policy is produced in Appendix A of the report, Chair, which is on pages 11 to 50 of the agenda. The policy is seeking to replace the current regulations, which the Council adopted in March 2009. These are detailed in Appendix B of the report on pages 51 to 61 of the agenda. The purpose of the proposed street trading policy is to provide a framework for the Council to administer and regulate street trading, ensuring a consistent approach is taken. The policy will serve as a reference for license holders, enforcement officers of the Council, other responsible authorities, and also the licensing committee as to the Council's intended vision and approach to street trading activities in the borough. It will also strengthen the Council's decision-making process for applications and will also support the Council's position in any decisions that they make should any issues arise. A summary of the operational service improvement areas that are set out in the policy. These are listed under paragraph 3.5 of the committee report, which is on page 8 of the agenda. In the last year, the Borough Council and the Licensing Authority has issued 898 temporary street trading licenses, 32 permanent pitches, and 32 shopfront displays. There are also currently 34 active pavement licenses, which have been issued under the Business and Planning Act, which was introduced as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. The main street trading hubs in the borough are located in Meacham, Wimbledon Village, and Wimbledon Town Centre. There are also some designated sites which provide catering vehicles, with the majority of these located in the industrial areas such as Wire Road, Wheeler Lane, and Lambert Road. So members tonight are being asked to approve for consultation the draft recommended street trading policy as laid out in Appendix A of the report, and that officers be instructed to report to the next licensing committee, which is scheduled to take place on the 28th of June, on the outcome of the consultation. This is the summary of the report, Chair. As I'm happy to answer any questions. I've got my colleague here, David Ryan, who's also a lead licensing officer on street trading. But we're happy to answer any questions you may have or any points of clarification at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Caroline. Right, first of all, I have a question from Una.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this report and summary. I just wanted clarification, or I wondered if you could just help us. I'm just trying to, because basically, whilst there's a summary, I couldn't really see what are the differences, or easily what are the differences from the 2009 policy. So we've got the appendix of the new one and we've got the old one. I just really wondered whether there are any major differences that we needed to worry about. And also on paragraph 2.7, where you're talking about the current street licenses and so on, it just struck me as to what changes would be incurred for them, or whether they can carry on trading with their existing one, or do they have to apply for new ones if there are changes? So that's what my interest is. Thank you.
Caroline, got some good questions there. Very broad questions too.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. We've given an outline. If it's a long list, actually, it's paragraph 3.5. We've not made any significant changes, but we've kind of looked at all the regulations that were approved by the council in 2009, because there were regulations were like conditions attached to the licenses and administration process. So what we've done is we've kind of compounded them and strengthened the application process. So some of the things that are in the policy, you know, the new things are terms for market trading, trader operators, because we didn't have a clear outline of the process of how market traders are licensed. And obviously we received council advice, and Mr. Guy Bishop can elaborate on that. So because of that, we just wanted to make sure that that information is set out quite clear to the license holders and also the residents. So that those are the new things that we've introduced. We've also looked at the improving air quality. So we're proposing that any street trader who's using vehicles for street trading purposes, they're not polluting, they're not idling. They have to find other means like using electric bollards to be able to provide that street trading activity. So we've kind of improved that to reduce air pollution. We've made it clear as well, if you go on that list, we've made it clear for street trading activities, instead of in respect to special provisions for community and charity street trading licenses. That is quite clear in the policy, so that the applicants are aware of what the expectations are. We've also tightened up on our decision-making process, licensing. You know, we've informed applicants about the need that there will be a hearing if there was a problem with a street trading application or during the duration of the license. We've kind of made that clear to license holders, you know, what the expectations are. We've also looked at our enforcement approach. So whilst we've been doing them in practice, we've put it out, laid it out in the policy so people can actually read it, because the regulations we had, they just listed the conditions and the administration of street trading. But we've kind of put everything in a document as a policy, which is like giving officers and councillors as a guide baseline of what we expect. We've also looked at the commodities list as well. That's quite new because we had, officers were constantly having to look at application and explaining to applicants. So we've made that quite clear in the policy, what the expectations are for applicants. So in terms of the policy in itself, it's not going to affect existing traders. it will mainly be about obviously improving the quality of service we provide to new applicants. And basically that's what we are proposing. And I know you've asked in 2.7, and I think I've probably answered your question where you said, will it affect street traders, existing street traders? I don't think it will. I'll ask my colleague David Ryan to also expand if I've missed anything, David. Yeah, oh, I can't hear you. It's on mute. Don't know if are you? No.
Chair, can any more questions be asked?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Right.
I'm quite happy to
Before
clarify.
you start, did David get his act together on that?
I think we can't hear him.
Never mind. Never mind.
I'm quite happy to expand on anything if there's any extra questions. I don't know whether that my explanation answered Councillor Una's query.
I think it's good for the moment.
Thank you. Yes, I think you have. So, but thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So the next person is Nigel Benbow. Come on, Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible to confirm for the street trading with the two meters still apply for the highway for people, walking through? And the other question is number 9, which is on crime and disorder. I find it very odd. There is no comments or concern about this. May I ask why? Thank you.
Can you help on that, Caroline?
Really sorry, you have to go through that again. I'm so sorry I couldn't.
Do you want to repeat that, Nigel?
Repeat it for me, Councillor Draper, though. I'm just struggling to, don't know if the Councillor can type it for me. I can read it in the chat, so I can.
I confess I didn't get it all, Nigel. I'm sorry about that. I apologise.
So if somebody can help me to, I'm really sorry about that. I'm quite happy to answer later, like after the meeting, or if it helps.
I think. Do you want to try again, Nigel?
Two quick question. The first question is on the street trading is on the street, on the pavement. My question is, will there be a rule still it says for two meters wide for people to walk past? Will that still be the same?
Yeah, I think if I get it right, I think the Councillor is asking, are you asking about pavement licenses and street trading licenses? If that would,
he's asking about whether the right of pedestrians to use the pavement is paramount where street trading or pavement trading is concerned.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I've got it. Yes, it's absolutely paramount, because one of the things we look at in terms of street trading is obviously making sure there's sufficient space for pedestrians and other users, parents with pushers. So we've got that 2-meter rule. And what we do as well, the 2-meter rule is actually, we've consulted with our colleagues in highways who would give us, we would check that colleagues in highways are also actually happy before we can issue a street trader. So we always look to the highway section as a responsible authority. but they've given us that 2 meter rule will be like a starting point before we can even grant any pavement license, you know, like tables and chairs, for example. So we would look at that. I think your second question was crime and disorder. If I'm right in that, yes, we do. Before we grant any street trading licenses, the main people that we consult are the police as well, as responsible authorities, as well as highways. So we would look before we would critically analyze that application. Also, we would look to our partners such as the Met Police comments on that application, because there's a 28-day consultation period before we can even grant that license. I don't know if that helps.
It certainly helps me, Caroline. Nigel, if you actually look in the draft policy under 9.3 and 9.9, it does set out very clearly about the blocking of pavements. So hopefully that's helpful to you. Right, I'm not. Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, clearly and quite properly, the paper that we have before us is written by officers for officers. Would it not be sensible, or have been sensible, to have an explanatory note of the changes that are being proposed, so that we actually had something side by side?
Okay. Thank you for that comment. Basically, the policy, we've not had a policy, and I take your point, Councillor, on there. We've not had a policy at all. All we had, if you look at regulation Appendix B for the regulations that we have, there is just a full list of conditions that we use when we grant the licenses. And basically that's all we've been using at the moment. We've not had a policy or all the information that we've put together. We've not had that. We've just had like the regulations, and the regulations are just like the conditions. And I hear your view. The conditions in this policy are attached at the appendix. Bear with me.
To be honest, I think you have answered that, Sir Caroline.
If I can just come back, we clearly did have. I mean, you have a policy. If you say to people, you can only have your stall here, and you cannot have it there, that in itself is a policy. And I don't want to be splitting hairs, but we have worked to regulations in the past. All I want to know, and well, I won't be here in June, so it doesn't really matter, I suppose. But the question I would put at this stage is, for those who will be here and serving on such a committee going forward, it will be very helpful to them to have some wider, simple explanation.
Okay, that's fine. We can provide that.
Now I have Russell first, and then Janice, and then Councillor Kohler. Good to see you.
Nice welcome. Thank you, Nick. I've got 3 questions, I think. First of all, am I to understand that the license is for 3 years only? It does say in here 3 years. It doesn't say anything about permanency. The second one is I'd like you to strengthen the bits about smells, noise, and environmental pollution coming from the vendor. And is the license holder liable for anything that pedestrians tend to fall over, like street tables and chairs that are left out overnight, or do they have to take them in? Thank you.
Interesting questions there, Caroline.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I mean, the licenses, in respect to the first question, we issue licenses for 1 year only in Merton, and shorter periods than that. We do issue temporary licenses up to a month or up to 6 months. But if somebody is applying for street trading, we only issue them for a year. And I hope that answers that question. The second query, yes, we do carry out enforcement. When we issue a license, the license is granted, it prescribes the area, the trading area, where that the trader will be allowed to trade. And if they exceed that area, obviously it becomes an enforcement issue. When we get complaints about, smell or cooking from street trading activities, we do work closely with environmental health officer from environmental health section, noise and pollution section. They are obviously help to lead on any investigation of nuisance smells. We've also consulted them in particular areas of the policy for them to make comments, and they will also be consulted if this policy was to be approved. We will also be consulting them, but we do work closely with the noise and nuisance team if we receive any complaints of nuisance smells. Does that answer the question, Councillor?
Just two of them, thank you. The other one was about removing furniture that's relevant for the street trader, like tables and chairs from the street, if they're not open.
Yeah, they're supposed to remove them if they're not open, but yes, we do receive complaints where we get complaints from residents saying that they've not removed, and then obviously if they're not complying with their license, we would look to carry an investigation as part of our enforcement approach. So yes, they're supposed to remove the furniture.
Thank you. Could I suggest that you change the word can to will on page 19, line 3? Because it says can be removed. It doesn't have that isn't strong enough as far as I'm concerned.
We'll look at that. We will look at that, and I will check obviously with legal services to make sure it would be legally enforceable, but we'll definitely look at that. Thank you.
It's a very good point though, Russell. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm looking at page 7, 3.1. I'm just curious as to why it's not been formally reviewed since 2009. That's 13 years. Certainly on other committees and other bodies like schools and that, I know that policies are reviewed in much quicker order, and 13 years seems a little long to have come to the conclusion that this needed updating. I would have thought it would have been a rolling programme of updating.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for that question. Basically, what we've had, the existing legal regulations we have, they're just like a set of conditions and administration. That's why they're quite odd, taking into consideration with the new ways of working and the pandemic. That's why obviously we felt it was necessary for us to produce this policy, which will be up to date with new legislation. So that's what we are doing, and unfortunately I can't explain what's in the past. That I started working for Merton Council in 2020, so we're just looking at all the systems that we've got in place to make sure that they are brought in line with new standards, really. So but the legislation itself is 1990, and there's never been any new legislation to supersede that. So we still have to wait with a primary legislation when we're discharging street trading duties, which is 1990 anyway. So it's the policy, what we're bringing is just to make sure that our processes are updated, but it won't undermine the primary legislation.
I'd say at this point actually that I mean, course you have a point. Just David had a point. You're looking at things and thinking, why hasn't this been done before? And I fully understand that. I think there've been two reasons. First of all, that and I know it's splitting hairs, that originally they were regulations, and you don't treat regulations in the same way that you treat policies. And second of all, on a much more human front, of course, Caroline's only been in the job for a relatively short period of time. And it's in that short period of time that she has looked at this and says, no, this has to change. So the flip side is we're doing the right thing now.
Yes, it was just, I was curious.
No, I'm not. You're allowed to be. I've got Paul, and then I got John.
Thank you, Chair. So can I go back to Una and David's point? Caroline, can I refer you to paragraph 1.4, where we say the current system is long, reform is long considered overdue, with the current system being consistent with modern street trading practices. Now, from what you said to Una, it seemed you were talking about procedural issues, but presumably there are substantive changes which David has tried to tease out and Una tried to tease out. And Nick, you said you understood this and it'd been well answered. So maybe, Karen, if you can't explain for us what these substantive changes are, maybe Nick, you can, because at the moment, I don't understand what the substantive changes are. I understand they're procedural tweaks and we're getting in line with other regulations. What are the substantive changes that actually will make a difference on the ground? Because I don't see that at the moment. Thank you.
Caroline?
No, thank you for that. And yes, we should have provided the changes, and I'm quite happy to report back and provide those changes, because if this policy was going to be approved, we would be able to go out for consultation for 12 weeks. But in terms of the conditions, we've not changed much of the conditions. We've looked at the processes that we've got in place to improve them. So the things that I've listed under paragraph 3.5 are kind of the highlights of what we've actually looked at in terms of the processes and improving, improving our decision making. So those are the headlines that I've given, but I'm quite happy to provide, if it helps, I'm quite happy to provide those sections in a table to explain what the difference is between, the differences that we've actually enhanced with the processes or improved in terms of in terms of determining applications, if that helps. But
Please do, yeah.
That was something I highlighted at the beginning. I think that would be helpful if you were able to provide that, because whilst I appreciate you gave that list, and I did see that, it's at such a high level that it doesn't really tell us what the changes are. And that's why I was concerned as well as to whether existing traders, had to conform and so on. And you've highlighted there that they don't need to. But
yeah.
For new trading licenses, which we're all going to, as David said, have to do, it would be helpful to know where the changes are, if indeed there are any major ones. I mean, there may not be. It may just be procedural to the degree that it's not. But I think we need to know. Thank you. That would be helpful.
Can I just make it clear that are we saying these are only procedural changes and there are no substantive changes in the conditions we're talking about? Is it just procedural we're talking about? Yeah,
we're basically looking at procedure. There's no substantive changes that will definitely impact on the existing license holders. We've reviewed our procedures to bring them more in line and up to date with modern way of street trading at the moment. So the main one that I would say is it would probably be a substantive change is improving air quality, because we are trying to say that, and again, it will be only street traders that are using engines to produce, to provide food, if that are relying on a car engine. the street traders that are idling, those are the ones that we're saying that, you know, in order to do that, they need to find a bollard electric board, plug into an electricity board instead of you idling, polluting, you know, polluting the communities. Those are the only significant changes. Otherwise, all the other changes that we are proposing are just procedural and more informative for applicants, really, so that they're clear about our processes.
Does that answer it? It is effectively procedural, with that one exception, which is air quality, and that one exception. I don't think there's anybody here who would object to tightening up on that, bearing in mind that, as we've already established, these are regulations which are out of date and obviously not in keeping with our current view on air quality. John, you had a question.
You have regular checks to see that the conditions of the license are being adhered to. For instance, the shop front licenses. I can take you to 2 shops now and say they're encroaching on the pavement area, almost a foot on the pavement area. And do you wait for complaints to come in, or you have regular checks to see that the conditions of these licenses are being adhered to?
Thank you, Chair. It's a combination of both, really. We do reactive enforcement compliance visits. When we receive reports, officers do go out, but when the officers are out, they do also carry out other, you know, within the specific area that they are out visiting, they will carry out enforcement work within that area. And that's how we approach. We don't go out on a regular basis, but we do combine reactive compliance visit as well as proactive when the officers are out. So if
Does that answer your question, John?
If the 2 shops, Councillor, if you let me know which shops are, we will look into that. We investigate that for you.
I think, John, we all have come across that particular problem from time to time in our wards, and I know that the officers do respond to those regularly, but they can't be proactive in every instance. Mary.
Thank you, Chair. On page 9, 4.5 and 4.4 says the committee will then be asked to recommend the street trading policy to be adopted at the meeting of the full council. And then on 4.5, it says the policy may be changed at any time after adoption, after further consultation, and can be regularly reviewed. It's probably me, but I don't fully understand that part. How can it be changed if it's been adopted at council?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Basically, what we're saying there is once a policy has been implemented and adopted, there will be opportunity to review it. For example, if there was any changes in legislation, we do that with other policies that we've got, that the Licensing Act gets reviewed, you know, every 5 years or lesser period. So what we don't want is to have a situation where we had these regulations in 2009 and just leave them. We want to be able to have a policy as a baseline, and once it's approved, we can review it every 3 years or when it's necessary to review it, not just to approve it this year and then leave it without reviewing it, because, you know, things do change. That's what I meant there, and I'm sorry if that confused you.
I'm going to make a suggestion at this point, because Mary, what you said there is thoroughly valid, and it harks back to what David was asking about, you know, why hasn't this been reviewed in the past? I think it might be worthwhile as a committee recommending, or even saying, deciding that the policy should be reviewed at regular intervals. Do you like that as an idea? Because that gets round what you were asking for there. Of course, it doesn't mean to say that it can't be reviewed more than that, because as Caroline has made very clear, it depends upon acts of government, because we are reflecting what the government tell us we can and can't do. So in the absence of changes from central government, can it do any ideas of how often we should review this policy, colleagues? 5 years. Caroline, is that, do you reckon that's feasible?
Yeah, 5, because the current licensing policies that we've got in place, Chair, we've got the gambling policy that gets reviewed every 3 years. The licensing policy gets reviewed every 5 years. So I would suggest 5 years or a lesser period.
Colleagues, are we agreed? Can we ask then, Caroline, this is reviewed every 5 years?
Okay.
Oh, hang on, we got a dissent there.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said 3. This is why I've got to retire. I'm getting old. Can't hear anything anymore. 5 years. We're agreed on, colleagues. Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Right, colleagues. Any other questions on this report? Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Right, on page 15, section 5.4, I understand the street trading license has a minimum of 6 months and a maximum of three years. My question is, if it once been up for a review or a renewal, can the local residents have their own say, because it might be an impact on their lives, and do they have the power to actually stop it? But I'm not sure. In your list on page 8, it calls the area for forum. Is that the residence forum? Thank you.
Okay.
I can answer that one if you can.
Good question.
My
Have you got
microphone's
that, Caroline?
Yeah, thank you. I'll start off, and then David, you can chip in because you deal with most of the applications. If we obviously, when the street trade, we in Merton we only grant licenses for 1 year or up to 6 months, and what we tend to do before a license is issued initially, we give it initially for 6 months, because then we want to look at the trading patterns and the behavior of that trader to make sure they're not causing any impact or nuisance or, to neighboring residents. So we take that information on board before we can grant him a year license. And then what we do, obviously, like I said, we do send out for consultation. And if residents are complaining, we would hope to know that there are issues at the beginning of the trading period. And we would look initially to try and get the street trader to cooperate and try to comply before their license even reaches the 6-month period. But if there are persistent issues, they wouldn't get that license after 6 months. They wouldn't get their yearly license. If we had issues, we would, in the first instance, look to try and work with the trader, to try and make him comply and, not to cause any impact to the community. But David, did you want to come in and provide further information on?
Yeah, can I just check that everyone can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, once the licenses are issued, they have a legal right to renew them, unless we have cause to have them revoked or varied. They have the right to renew those every year. There isn't a consultation process at the end of that year. It's a rolling license effectively. But what we'd look at is if we had complaints throughout the year, as Caroline's indicated, then we would look at whether we would actually renew that license as is, or whether we'd have to look at changing it or revoking it. So there's a legal process in place for that. which gives them a right of appeal to magistrates court as well. So it's not as straightforward as just having a quick review and removing it, because obviously it's their livelihood. But we would look at all steps in between that we can take as an authority.
What we've done as well, Councillor, is in the new policy, we've put that quite clear for traders as well. So we've got a section on decision making, hearings, other consideration, and one of them is noise nuisance. So we've got that now laid out in our policy. So the trader would be very aware of the council approach. So and it quite clearly sets out that public nuisance is one of the things we would look at when considering any application, or indeed a renewal application.
I think I'd like to add something at this point, if it's all right. I mean, you know, where things go wrong, it's fairly clearly laid out under offences and enforcement. What happens? The one thing that we can't do as a committee, I don't think we should do either, is decide after a certain street trader has been in position for a while that we object to them because they're there, and that sort of thing does happen. People saying that, well, it's not good for our street and stuff like that, and unfortunately, well, fortunately, in my opinion, the policy doesn't cover just plain dislike. There's got to be proper reasons for licenses being revoked. Right, I don't have a question anymore because, of course, I do. Pollution. Caroline, I do understand that you know, the air quality has taken on an increasing role. Where there's an existing, this goes back to what Una was asking, where there's an existing trader who, because of what he or she is doing, does pollute, and we want them to change. How are we going to go about enforcing that change, given that they are existing traders?
Okay, thank you. One of the things we currently do, and I'm hoping David will come in on this, is most of the traders in Merton do trade from electric bollards, so they use electricity, most of them. So we've scoped, unlike Richmond Council, in Merton, we're in a bit better position in terms of pollution. We don't have a lot of idling traders. But what we've proposed in the policy is that existing traders will have to conform to new policy requirements if they're using trading activities as part of, you know, making food. If they're using their engines, then they'll have to conform within a year of the policy being approved. Reasoning for that is we've found out that it would cost an existing trader to convert to a compliant vehicle. It would probably, to convert it would probably cost them 20,000. So we've taken that into consideration. That's why we are suggesting that they need to conform to new requirements by 2023. But I'll ask David to expand in terms of what we do at the moment.
We have very few traders that are actually operating from idling engines. In the main, ice cream vans in remote locations up near Wimbledon Common, for example. So what we're looking at here is any traders that are coming into the borough, so we can have immediate effect on the air quality. So thereby restricting those traders from operating within Merton in the first place. We will obviously work with anyone that's currently trading. Any substantial changes, we're also working with air quality. They apply to various central government grants to help assist with air quality improvement works across all the boroughs. And we've currently got a project running in Richmond, which is looking at similar issues, installing power bollards in these locations to improve it and also get them on the grid. So we are working with our colleagues there to address anything that comes up in that time. But obviously we've had to set a timescale to that. Otherwise, the impact could continue for many years afterwards. But as we said, with the rest of the policy, we'll be going out to those traders, so they'll be able to see the implications for themselves before anything's agreed.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Are there any other questions on this? Right. Okay. As you can see from the document, it's going out to consultation, and the consultation will be reported back on at the next licensing meeting, which I won't be at, and David won't be at, and I don't know. It will be new faces, many of us, and there may be some existing ones as well. What are you saying? I think we ought to do that, oughtn't we? Shall we? Can we do that, colleagues? Then that's what we're going to do. We agree with the process, Caroline.
Thank you, Member.
Oh, sorry. Mic on, sorry.
Here and a lot of councillors, you know, we organise groups for older people and for, you know, their health and well-being. And I'd like to see that the licensing takes into consideration wheelchairs, movement of the wheelchairs in shopping areas, and also when there's old fruit on the pavement, it should be cleared up straight away rather than a risk hazard, which we do find occasionally in Morden.
I think part of that, Mary, is covered by what Russell asked for about how things will be cleared up. But yes, I mean, the policy does go on about making sure that people hold their stalls in an orderly fashion, and that does include clearing up spills and problems that are ongoing during the course of trading. As far as wheelchairs accessibility is concerned, the policy asks for 2 meters, which actually some of our payments are actually smaller than 2 meters, but not the ones where there's street trading. And I think 2 meters should be about okay for a wheelchair. If anybody can contradict that, I'm quite willing to. No? You're all right with that?
One particular one in Morden, when you come around the corner, as you're heading towards Sainsbury's, there's a vegetable stall there that doesn't allow enough room for wheelchairs.
We will look at that for you, Councillor.
There is, and we'll take that out of the council, out of the meeting, and report that through to Caroline, if you could.
Caroline said about going out to consultation. Does that mean, because both Stan and I are involved with 6 different groups for older people, will she be visiting people to, you know, these groups to get their opinions on things?
It will be, Caroline, is the consultation going out to hard to reach people, or is it going through the normal channels?
Yeah, we're going to put the consultation online. It will be available online, and we're sending it certainly any focus groups. We've listed on the on the appendix, which is on page 23 of the policy, the consultation lists of who will be sending the policy to. But we can certainly, you know, if there's any particular interest group, I'm quite willing. If the councillor provides me the details, I'm quite willing to provide them, because it's a wider consultation. So I'm quite willing to provide a focus group of some kind for them to feed back into the policy, the draft proposals. But we will be putting it out on the website as well, and we'll be advertising the fact that we are consulting in a local newspaper as well. So directing people to visit our website and submit their comments.
If we were to include just at the bottom of that list, residents associations, and I think that would, I know it's a bit vague, but it would include the groups that you and Stan are representing. I think if we just added residents associations to the end of that, I don't think that would be too onerous. So, okay, Caroline.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. We're okay for this to go forward for consultation with those notes. Is there anything else before I close the meeting, because it's the last thing on it, that anybody wants to say?
I mean, the meeting's happened now, but I think somebody was putting up messages on the screen all the time, and it's in very small font and we can't read it. Well, I can't read it anyway, so I don't know what was said.
I wasn't even trying to read it. Was anybody else trying to read it? I was too excited by what was happening. There you go. There you go. Okay. Right. So
If it is our last meeting, just to thank you, Chair, and for the officers for all their work and so on in support of the committee. Thank you.
oh, thank you very much indeed. Well, I'd like to thank my predecessor or predecessor's predecessor, I'm not sure, for his sterling work, and I'd like to thank Caroline for her for really sort of taking a position which had been held for a long time and moving along with it and making the changes that we've been talking about tonight. I think licensing is going to be an exciting place to be, and I know that's seconded by Councillor Aaron Brittis, who had to leave us early. So I'm really, at a distance, we'll be looking forward to the changes and the exciting things that are going to be happening within licensing in the years to come. Thank you very much indeed.